However, social media has highlighted the impact of Enlifax, and leading the charge has been Sarah McRae and Heather Williams. Sarah wrote a comprehensive complaint which details her own experiences with Enlifax, which she outlined last week on Mental Health Radio, Take It From Us. Now, you can access Sarah's comments on www.planetaudio.org.nz/Take It From Us, or on our own website where we have edited and uploaded Sarah's comments and also Gayleen Maurice's comments about the difficulties they had with Enlifax, and you can access that on www.framework.org.nz and go to our Take It From Us page. I'd like to read from social media some comments from users of Enlifax, and later in the show we have an interview recorded yesterday with a psychiatrist, a consulting psychiatrist, Rob Sheaf, who's taken more than a passing interest in the impact of generics, particularly antidepressant generics, on his patients. This has happened before with antidepressants, Rob says, with a number of the most popular antidepressants, and Rob is seeing many patients whose moods have dropped and their depression and anxiety have worsened. And I just reinforce that he's seen many patients, and there are many patients talking on social media about how their mood has dropped and their depression and anxiety has worsened. It is more than ironic. In fact, Rob said that it was tragic that an antidepressant designed to relieve symptoms is worsening people's depression and anxiety, and it seems the solution from prescribers of Enlifax is to take more, is to prescribe more, while any of us who have been on antidepressants would surely know that if people are getting side effects, then taking more of the drug is only going to intensify them. But apparently some prescribers believe that if we are still experiencing side effects, that the only solution is to increase the dose. So here are some experiences with Enlifax outlined on social media. One says, how soon after starting the Enlifax did you experience side effects? I've just gathered information from my pharmacist, and the effect on me was pretty instantaneous. That's after being stable on Effexor, that's the drug that was replaced by Enlifax, for 15 months. I can only describe it as a sudden weak feeling, like my blood pressure was low and like the blood had drained out of me. I had also been having aching thighs. After this, severe anxiety, terror, then depression. Roller coaster ride for nearly 15 months. Long story, she says. Now on Effexor 375 milligrams. Another says, I went to the GP today. She was unaware of the change from from Effexor to Enlifax or the reactions, but happy to put me back on Effexor. Also told my counsellor about it. Can't wait to see how the non-generic drug makes me feel. And this is symptomatic of so many comments on social media, on the Facebook page. And I want to stress this Facebook page is entitled Enlifax, Problems with Medication Brand Change, New Zealand. And this social media subscriber says, went back on Effexor on Saturday. Last night, first night in ages with no night sweats. Mood feeling best in ages, even though that may be just from knowing I might have an answer now and a word called hope. Thank you so much, Heather Williams, and Heather is one of the instigators of this campaign, for your hard work. You deserve a special thanks. Thankful, she's very thankful that nobody is running her down. Another one from the NLFX, Problems with Medication Brain Change New Zealand, 7:30 p.m, still tired, still dippy and doing silly things, clumsy, feel like my calves are going to cramp a lot, headachy, gut pain, sore joints and shooting pain still. But kind of grinnier. Things have made me smile more easily today. It's got to be good. Feel like I'm getting a peek through the fog. So these are all very devastating experiences with NLFX. In fact, Sarah McRae, who is the sort of campaigner heading up this NLFX Problems with Medication Brain Change New Zealand, she says, "Hi all, a member who would like to stay anonymous but has asked me to post this. I saw my GP today and talked about being on NLFX after not having venlafaxine as an option. I mentioned how since this topic has risen in the media, it's made me more aware of the effects NLFX has had on me. I try not to pay attention to things like that. However, I said how I've had crazy emotional days where I've been at work and just lost the plot, crying and having to work through it. Also, how if I miss a dose, I feel like electric shocks are running through my body with every slight movement, and that I've traced back to when I started NLFX. I put on a solid amount of weight as well. I'm currently on 150 milligram of NLFX, but my GP has recommended I increase it with a 37.5 milligram dose to see if it will boost the drug and work like venlafaxine used to for me. Does that make sense, she says? Well, I'd like to answer that and say it doesn't seem to make any sense to me that if you're having difficulties with a drug with serious side effects, weight gain, sweats, why would you want to increase the dosage? And I think people should be seriously asking their prescribers why they can't go back on venlafaxine. Well, that's probably enough of a rant from me. Declan, what have we got in the way of music on Mental Health Awareness Week?
Well, I just wanted to say firstly that you can go to that site medsafe.govt.nz, medsafe.govt.nz. That's actually quite good to go and find out about your medications and just exactly what the side effects are. And, of course, you can always ask your pharmacist and hopefully they're up with the play. But I was also just going to say, too, was the manufacturers of this new one, have they not done their research as to replicate the contents of the original?
Well, I'd just like to quote from the Pharmac media release or information release made in April last year. It says here, NLFX has been thoroughly evaluated by MedSafe to ensure it's safe and works the same as the other brands.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
Okay, well, we're talking today to Rob Sheaf, who's a consulting psychiatrist in Ponsonby, about the outcry that has developed, particularly on Facebook and in the media, about NLFX XR. Well, what's your stance on this, Rob?
The issue about the NLFX replacement of the brand effects it's certainly caught the public attention, and there are certainly some things that I'd like the opportunity to talk with you about. But before I launch in, I think it's very, very important for me to say that Pharmac, I think, do a terrific job trying to service the population with medication given the relatively restricted budget they have to work with. And what this means really is that Pharmac show a preference in supporting low-cost medication alternatives to the brand products, which by and large tend to be very much more expensive. And when it comes to antidepressant medication, for many years now, I certainly, and I know many of my colleagues, have been concerned that a number of generic substitution replacements for brand originals either don't have the same effectiveness as the brand original, or they have a different profile of side effects to the brand original. And that's definitely been my observation for a number of years through a number of different products, and it's become obvious to me over the last 4 or 5 years with venlafaxine. Its original brand formulation is called Effexor, which I've prescribed not uncommonly in my practice for about 10 years. When the Effexor product was initially replaced by a generic substitute, it went under a different name from Enlafax.
That was called Venlafaxine XR.
That's correct. It was called venlafaxine. It came in a tablet. I noticed a number, by no means everybody, but a number of people who I'd previously treated with Effexor who switched to that product noticed a deterioration in their mood or the development of side effects which resolved when they went back to the original brand Effexor product. And I've noticed exactly the same trend in a number, not all, but in a number of people who've switched on to the Enlafax replacement of Effexor. I have a number of people who've switched from Effexor to Enlafax and have been aware that the effectiveness has reduced. They've noticed their depressive or anxious symptoms intensifying. And when those people have returned to the original brand Effexor, they've reclaimed the benefit that they'd noticed with that product.
They've been able to do that because it sounds as though you are completely knowledgeable of the fact that they have that option to return to venlafaxine or Effexor XR. But I'd like to take you back to some of the side effects that you've been noticing for people who have been transferred onto Enlafax. Apart from their mood dropping, their anxiety increasing, have you noticed any other side effects?
Primarily, the thing that's caught my attention and raised my concern has been a deterioration in mood or an increase in anxiety. The confusing factor is that so many symptoms of depression and problematic anxiety closely mimic the side effect profile that people can experience on medication that they use to treat those problems. And it becomes very difficult to know if somebody's concerned about a physical side effect, or a physical experience, whether it's a side effect of the medication or if it's a symptom of the problem that they're taking the medication for.
So how do they differentiate? I mean, it could be that something has triggered them. They've had a breakup in a relationship, or they may have lost a job, or they're financially stressed. How do they differentiate between the impact of the Enlafax or the antidepressant that's supposed to be helping them, and that trigger that may?
It's a difficult dilemma to resolve. There are a couple of things that can help. Firstly, the passage of time is useful. Generally, side effects from most of the antidepressant medications tend to soften and fade over a week or two. Symptoms of depression or anxiety tend not to do that unless people are responding to the medication. And the other thing to do is, with the supervision of their prescribing doctor, is to change their dose. So if the dose of their medication increases and they feel better, the problems were probably depression or anxiety. If the dose of the medication increases and they feel worse, it was probably a side effect.
Well, my GP has sort of suggested to me that I could do my own test because I've gone back onto Effexor at a cost of $30, I think, for about 86 tablets. And that's very affordable for me. But the shakiness, the tremors, the inability to hold a glass without using two hands, those symptoms have all gone. And also, I had a sort of a tendency towards psoriasis, where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and my scalp was incredibly itchy. That has gone, and I raised that issue of psoriasis because many people on the Facebook page entitled Enlifex have complained of this side effect, which, I think they're talking about a far more serious psoriasis than just a discomfort like I had.
Right.
And none of these things are helpful for people who are vulnerable to depression and anxiety.
No, of course it's not, but I don't want to add confusion and complication. But again, the shakiness that you talked about, and perhaps the skin condition, including psoriasis, could both be symptoms of anxiety that the Enlifex wasn't targeting as effectively as the brand Effexor Original was, which may be why the tremor for you is reduced and your skin conditions resolved. It may be because you've taken away the Enlifex. If it was causing those problems, it may be because the return to the Effexors dropped your anxiety and stress and enabled those problems to resolve.
Well, I shouldn't say this on public radio because if my GP is listening, he'll be horrified, but I've also reduced my venlafaxine intake and I'm feeling a box of birds.
Right, which is why I said before that it's always useful to at least run it past the doctor that's done the prescribing so that they're aware of what's going on.
Yes, and I raised the issue of the outcry about Enlifex, and he very much appreciated that because he anticipated that there would be other patients coming in. But, Rob, can I just take you back to the assurances that Pharmac gave in 2017, where they said Enlifex XR will work in the same way as Arrow Venlafaxine XR and Effexor XR. Enlifex has the same active ingredient as the other brands and is delivered to the body in the same way. So, I've only just accessed that online in the last few days, but that seems to be very reassuring and I'm sure was picked up by the media when this change was made. But now we find that for some people, perhaps a majority of people, those assurances don't hold up.
Yes, I would agree with you. And again, Pharmac rely very heavily on the information that they're provided by the industry. A lot of the concerns that I've encountered with the Pharmac response relates really to what the body does to the medication. And it may well be that Enlifex and Effexor are both metabolized and eliminated from the body in exactly the same way. And it may well be that the molecule, the venlafaxine molecule, is the same in Enlifex and Effexor, but the important point is what happens in a clinical situation with an individual patient who's been prescribed. And the cause of the difference, whether it's a different coating, whether it's a different preparation, not that I'd suggest that people do, but if you open up an Effexor capsule, it's full of little white granules. If you open up an Enlifex capsule, it's got a tablet or two inside it, and I'm not sure why a capsule has a tablet inside it, whether or not it's the venlafaxine molecule or the inert binder that pads out the volume of the tablet, or if it's something to do with the coating on the tablet, whatever's happening. In my experience, and in the experience of a number of colleague psychiatrists who I've spoken to, a group of people lose effectiveness when they shift from Effexor to Enlifex, or don't show the sort of benefit that you'd expect if they start treatment with Enlifex.
So, I mean, what sort of initiatives, it sounds as though you've been talking to some of your colleague psychiatrists. Have you taken any other initiatives as a result of the sort of evidence that you're building up?
There's a fairly steady stream from myself and my colleagues of reports to Pharmac about what we've observed. I can't talk knowledgeably about whether or not it applies specifically to Enlifex, which is relatively new to the market, but certainly with a number of other products where the generic has lacked the potency of the brand original, communications being made with Pharmac directly to highlight those observations to them. So it's something that the personnel from Pharmac are aware of.
I understand that there are other antidepressants where a generic has replaced the original SSRI. Is that correct?
That's right.
And yeah, I mean that.
And in a number of those situations, the same phenomena has been very obviously replicated in some, but not all of the people who've been prescribed. One example would be antidepressant called citalopram. The original brand formulations, which were called Cipramil or Celopram, were, at least in my experience, but certainly commonly amongst my colleagues, were significantly more potent than the citalopram generics. Another SSRI called paroxetine, the original brand called Loxamine, was quite significantly more potent than the generic replacement. There are a number of medications where it's been obvious that on a clinical level that the generic hasn't been as effective as the brand original.
So is this just happening with psychiatric medication, or is it happening across the board?
That's something that I can't answer, I'm afraid. I don't know. I suspect that there's nothing particularly special about psychiatric medication. I wouldn't be surprised if medications used to treat other forms of illness have the same problem. It would be something that would be interesting to take up with physicians who prescribe medication for different conditions.